Captain Kara Zane stared out across the scarred landscape of Vorlix, her eyes tracing the jagged skyline of what had once been a thriving city, now reduced to rubble. The fading sun cast long shadows, making the ruins appear as silent sentinels to the planet's turbulent history. Around her, the chatter of her diplomatic envoy faded to a distant murmur as she considered her mission. "Captain Zane, the delegates are waiting," Lieutenant Morris said, approaching her with a hesitant step. His voice was cautious, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once defined their lives during the wars. Kara turned, her gaze hardening. "Let them wait a moment longer," she replied. "Understanding the stakes comes before diplomacy." As they walked towards the makeshift council hall, Morris frowned. "Do you think they'll even listen? After all, these factions aren't known for their cooperation." "That's exactly why we're here," Kara said sharply. "Because they don't listen, and because this planet is too critical to let fall into chaos again." The council hall was a dome-shaped structure, patched together from the remnants of what had likely been a museum. Inside, representatives of the three major galactic factions, the Zerai Dominion, the Drathi Collective, and the Cinder Confederation, sat in a tense assembly, each faction's distrust palpable in the air. As Kara entered, the room fell into a weighted silence. She walked to the center of the hall, aware of every eye fixed upon her. The reputation of humanity's brutal ingenuity during the last galactic conflict had preceded her, and now, it was her shield and weapon. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kara began, her voice echoing slightly in the vaulted space. "We stand at a crossroads. Vorlix can either become a symbol of a united future or a trigger for another catastrophic war. The choice is yours." Zarkel of the Zerai Dominion, a hulking figure with piercing blue eyes, stood up. His voice was a low growl. "And why should we trust humanity? Your kind are newcomers here. What stake do you have in our peace?" Kara met his gaze steadily. "Because every conflict burns resources and lives that none of us can afford. Humanity didn't just survive the last galactic conflict, we ended it. We learned the hard way that the cost of war extends beyond the battlefield." Mira Talon of the Drathi Collective, a sleek, silver-skinned woman with sharp features, leaned forward. "Yet we hear tales of your ruthless tactics, Captain. How do we know you won't turn Vorlix into another testing ground for your strategies?" "We are not here to fight, but to facilitate," Kara replied. "But make no mistake, Drathi Collective, Cinder Confederation, and Zerai Dominion, should this treaty fail because of treachery, humanity will not hesitate to step in. Our intervention would be swift and decisive." Silence followed her words, a tense, charged silence that spoke of the fear and respect that humanity now commanded. "Then let's hear your proposal, Captain Zane," Scylla Ven of the Cinder Confederation finally said, his tone cautious but curious. Kara outlined her plan, focusing on shared governance of Vorlix, with a council made up of representatives from each faction. She proposed a rotating leadership and equal sharing of the planet's resources. "Our presence here will be minimal," Kara continued. "Humanity will only oversee the treaty's implementation and help mediate disputes. We are not here to govern." The factions debated among themselves, their voices a cacophony of dissent and intrigue. Kara stood silently, letting them hash out their concerns without interference. This was the delicate part of diplomacy, knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the work. After what seemed like hours, the factions tentatively agreed to a trial period. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. As the meeting adjourned, Kara stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The stars twinkled above, indifferent to the struggles below. Morris joined her, a smile breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. "Well done, Captain! It seems they're willing to give peace a chance." "For now," Kara said, her eyes on the horizon. "But this is just the beginning, Morris. We've planted a seed here today. Let's hope it grows into something lasting." As they walked back to their quarters, Kara felt the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her. The peace they had brokered was fragile, and the road ahead was fraught with potential pitfalls. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself a small sliver of hope. Humanity had once been the wild card of the galaxy, unpredictable and feared. Now they were the mediators, the peacekeepers. It was a role that came with its own dangers, but Kara Zane was no stranger to danger. She had faced it head-on in the wars, and she would face it again now in the diplomatic arenas where words were the weapons and stakes were entire worlds. As the night deepened, the stars shone brighter, and Kara Zane, human diplomat and strategist, prepared for the days ahead, knowing that the peace they sought was not merely a cessation of hostilities but a new beginning for all. Kara Zane returned to her office after the initial council meeting, her mind racing with the day's events and the precarious balance they had struck. Vorlix was quiet tonight, the calm before what she feared could be a storm. At her desk, she pored over the intelligence reports and dispatches that outlined the subtle undercurrents of the factional alliances and rivalries. The silence of the office was a stark contrast to the cacophony of her thoughts. Just as she was about to conclude for the night, her communication console beeped, an incoming message from an unknown sender. Kara opened it with a flick of her hand, her eyes scanning the cryptic message. "They are planning to break the treaty before it even begins. Watch the shadows." The message was unsigned, no trace of the sender's identity. It could be a trap, misinformation meant to sow discord, or it could be the warning that saved them all. Kara immediately contacted Lieutenant Morris. "Morris, I need you to quietly gather more information. Someone is plotting against the treaty. We need to find out who and why." "Understood, Captain," Morris replied, his voice firm. "I'll get our best people on it right away." As days turned into nights, reports began to filter in. Morris and his team unearthed evidence of clandestine meetings between some members of the Zerai Dominion and unknown entities. It appeared that a faction within the Zerai was not only unhappy with the treaty but was actively seeking to sabotage it. Kara convened a secretive meeting with her closest advisors in a secure room. "We have potential traitors among us," she began, laying out the evidence Morris had gathered. "If we handle this the wrong way, we could plunge not only Vorlix but the entire region into war." The team debated their options, ranging from confronting the Zerai directly to more subtle forms of surveillance and counterplotting. Kara decided on a cautious approach. "We'll continue to gather evidence and strengthen our position. We can't afford to strike without undeniable proof. In the meantime, increase our security measures and keep a close watch on all faction leaders." The following days were tense as Kara and her team worked to uncover more about the conspiracy. Through careful manipulation and some discreet hacking operations, they traced a series of communications between the Zerai insurgents and an unknown off-world syndicate. It was clear now that this was not just internal dissent, this was a well-orchestrated plan to provoke humanity into a military response, undermining the peace treaty and potentially positioning the Zerai as the dominant power in the aftermath. Kara needed to act swiftly but discreetly. In a private meeting with Zarkel, she laid her cards on the table. "We know about the plot, Zar," she said, her voice low but filled with a steely resolve. "You have members within your ranks who are planning to betray the treaty. This is your chance to come clean and work with us, or face the consequences alone." Zarkel, taken aback by Kara's directness, faltered initially but then regained his composure. "This is a serious accusation, Captain. I assure you, I have no knowledge of such a plot." "Then let us help you root them out," Kara proposed. "It's in neither of our interests for the treaty to fail." Reluctantly, Zarkel agreed to cooperate, but Kara knew she couldn't take his word alone. She continued her surveillance, tightening security around key locations and monitoring communications even more closely. As the evidence of the conspiracy solidified, Kara prepared for a decisive strike. Her team arrested several key members of the insurgency in a series of rapid, targeted raids. The operations were smooth, with minimal disruption, a testament to her team's efficiency and the element of surprise. With the insurgents in custody, Kara presented the full breadth of her evidence in an emergency session of the council. The room was tense, the air thick with accusations and denials as representatives from the Zerai Dominion scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Kara's address to the council was clear and powerful. "This was not just a betrayal of humanity, but a betrayal of all who seek peace in the galaxy. Let this be a warning to any who would use deceit and violence to achieve their ends. We will find you, and you will face justice. The Council voted overwhelmingly to uphold the treaty, with increased powers for oversight and enforcement granted to humanity's representatives. The Zerai Dominion, publicly shamed and politically weakened, had no choice but to purge their ranks of the insurgents and reaffirm their commitment to peace. In the aftermath, Kara returned to her office, a sense of weary satisfaction settling over her. They had averted a crisis, but the victory was bitter. Peace is never easy, she mused aloud, gazing out at the stars. But it's always worth the effort. Morris entered, a report in hand. The factions are rattled, but they're holding to the treaty for now. Your actions have not only averted a crisis but also strengthened our position here. Good, Kara replied, taking the report. Let's keep it that way. Vigilance, Morris. Always vigilance. As she reviewed the latest security updates, Kara felt the weight of leadership heavy on her shoulders. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was fragile, but under her watchful eye, it would hold. For Kara Zane, the battle for peace was just another kind of war, and it was one she was determined to win. Captain Kara Zane's strategy to unveil and disrupt the insurgency had shifted the balance of power. With the key conspirators in custody, she now faced the complex task of solidifying the fragile peace on Vorlix. Her actions had proven humanity's commitment to maintaining order, but the real challenge lay ahead, ensuring that such a betrayal could never again threaten the galaxy. In the quiet of her office, Kara reviewed the latest reports from Morris. The remaining faction leaders, now wary and somewhat grateful, had agreed to meet and discuss the future of the treaty. Kara knew this was her opportunity to redefine the terms of peace and assert a new level of oversight. It was a delicate maneuver, too forceful, and she risked alienating the factions; too lenient, and she left the door open for future conflicts. As she prepared for the meeting, Kara reflected on her role. She was not just a mediator, she had become a guardian of a peace that was still tentative, still too vulnerable to the ambitions of those who craved power. She would need to be both diplomat and warrior today. The council hall buzzed with tension as the faction leaders gathered. Kara entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. She wasted no time in addressing the assembly. Today, we stand at a pivotal moment, Kara began, her voice resonant and assured. The conspiracy we uncovered was a symptom of a deeper problem, a lack of trust and a surplus of ambition. If we are to prevent such threats in the future, we need more than a treaty, we need a new framework for peace. She laid out her proposal, a permanent peacekeeping force, led by humans but staffed by members of all factions. This force would oversee the enforcement of the treaty and act as a rapid response team to any threats against peace. It was a bold move, expanding human involvement, but framed as a collaborative effort. The proposal sparked immediate debate. Some saw it as a necessary step, a way to bind the factions together under a common cause. Others viewed it with suspicion, as a veiled attempt at asserting human dominance. Zarkel was the first to voice his concerns. While we appreciate humanity's role in uncovering the plot, we must not allow fear to drive us into relinquishing our sovereignty. How can we be sure this force will not become a tool for human supremacy? Kara anticipated this reaction. She responded calmly. This force will be under joint command. No single faction, including humanity, will have unilateral control. Its actions will be governed by a council representing all factions, with decisions made collectively. Miratalone, ever pragmatic, chimed in. And what of our own military capabilities? Will we be expected to disarm? Not disarm, but demilitarize, Kara clarified. Reducing our military capabilities to defensive measures only. This force will not replace your own security but will focus on threats to our collective peace. The debate raged on, with Karen navigating the objections and concerns with a diplomat's grace and a strategist's acumen. She conceded on some minor points to demonstrate goodwill, but held firm on the essentials. The negotiations were grueling, a test of patience and resolve. As hours turned into night, a consensus slowly emerged. The realization that no faction could stand alone against the kind of treachery they had faced seemed to finally resonate. The memory of the near disaster was still fresh, a reminder of what was at stake. Finally, Sylvain, the youngest of the faction leaders, gave voice to the changing tide. Let us not be blinded by past grievances or future fears. This proposal offers a chance not only for peace but for unity. Perhaps it's time we redefine what it means to be sovereign, not as isolation but as interdependence. His words seemed to shift the atmosphere. One by one, the leaders began to voice their support. The resolution to establish the peacekeeping force passed with a significant majority. As the council disbanded, Kara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had turned one of the most challenging moments of her career into a foundation for lasting peace. But more importantly, she had helped shift the galaxy's perception of humanity, from feared warriors to respected peacekeepers. Back in her office, Kara allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Morris walked in, a smile playing on his lips. Looks like you've managed to steer the ship through the storm, Captain. Kara smiled back, her gaze fixed on the reports still streaming in. For now, Morris, for now. The real work begins tomorrow. Maintaining peace is a constant effort, not a singular victory. As the stars shone outside her window, Kara Zane, once a soldier, now a peacemaker, prepared for the next day, knowing that each day brought new challenges. But tonight, at least, she could rest with the knowledge that she had steered them towards a better future. The new peacekeeping force was a significant turning point in galactic politics, a symbol of humanity's growing influence and dedication to maintaining order. As Captain Kara Zane walked through the newly established headquarters, located in the heart of Vorlix, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Every decision she made could either strengthen the fragile bonds of peace or send them spiraling towards chaos. Lieutenant Morris approached her, a stack of digital reports in his hand. Captain, all teams are on schedule. The integration training is progressing, but there are some tensions as expected. Kara nodded, her mind already racing with solutions. Bring the faction leaders together tomorrow. It's time they see this operation firsthand. If they witness their own people working side by side, it might ease some concerns. That meeting was crucial. Representatives from each faction, including Zarkel and Miratalon, toured the facility, observing their personnel being trained together, learning to operate as a single unit. The sight of former rivals now sharing duties, exchanging knowledge, and even sharing meals spoke volumes. As the tour concluded, Kara addressed the group. This force represents more than just a military alliance. It's a testament to what we can achieve when we set aside our differences and work towards a common goal. Vorlix will be our proving ground, a beacon of cooperation and peace. The representatives murmured among themselves, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and hope. Zarkel stepped forward, his stance no longer hostile but contemplative. I must admit, Captain Zane, seeing our people together like this, it gives me hope that perhaps peace is possible. Kara smiled, acknowledging his support. It will take time, and it won't be without challenges. But together, we can ensure that the horrors of the past remain just that, history. Over the next few months, Kara's peacekeeping force faced numerous challenges, from logistical nightmares to attempts by fringe groups to disrupt their operations. Each incident was handled with a combination of firm action and diplomatic finesse, slowly solidifying the force's reputation as an effective and impartial guardian of peace. However, the real test came when an armed conflict erupted on the border of the Drathi and Zerai territories. A dispute over resource allocation had escalated, threatening to unravel the delicate fabric of the treaty. Kara immediately deployed her peacekeepers, positioning them between the conflicting factions. She then called for an urgent summit, bringing the leaders together to negotiate before the conflict could escalate further. We cannot let this dispute destroy what we've all worked so hard to build, she implored the leaders. Let our force do its job. Let us help you find a solution that benefits everyone, not just one side. The negotiations were tense, with both sides presenting their claims and grievances. Kara listened, mediated, and proposed compromises. After hours of discussion, a new agreement was reached, a redistribution of resources that was equitable and sustainable. As the leaders signed the new accord, Kara felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. The peacekeeping force had not only prevented a war but had also facilitated a peaceful resolution to a potentially explosive situation. In the aftermath, Kara's respect among the galaxy's political leaders grew. Even those who had initially doubted her intentions now viewed her as a key figure in maintaining galactic peace. Her inbox was flooded with messages of gratitude and support, a stark contrast to the threats and warnings she had received in her early days as captain. One evening, as she reviewed the latest reports, Morris entered her office with a smile. "You know, Captain, there are rumors out there that you're being considered for a major diplomatic award." Kara laughed softly, her eyes still on the reports. "I'm not in this for awards, Morris. I just want to ensure that our galaxy knows peace for a long time." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Morris replied, his tone earnest. "You've shown us all what's possible when humanity leads not by force, but by example." As Kara looked out her window at the setting sun, she pondered the future. The peace they had achieved was still delicate, but it was real. She knew challenges lay ahead, but she also knew that they had built something strong, something that could withstand the tests of time. That night, as the stars shone brightly above Vorlix, Captain Kara Zane felt a rare moment of peace herself. She had faced countless battles, both physical and political, but now she was leading a new kind of fight, a fight for a lasting peace. And in this moment, she knew that no matter what the future held, she had already changed the galaxy for the better.